Hello and welcome to the Kansas City SQL Server User Group. Glad you could join us for our Lunch and Learn with Olivier von Steenlandt, presenting Improving Team Collaboration Using Database Projects in Azure DevOps. With all things DevOps all the time. Feel free to put your questions in the chat throughout the presentation and Oliver will answer them at the end. Just a note, the session is recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel in the next few days. And since this is our Lunch and Learn, we're just going to jump right in and I'll let you take it away, Oliver.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Quickly going to share my screen to make sure that that works fine. And share my
I see
slide.
it. Yep.
And you should be able to see my slide deck as well.
Yep. Perfect.
Cool. Then we're going to kick off. So,
excellent.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're joining from, of course. Welcome to my session about improving team collaboration using database projects and Azure DevOps. Before I start the session, first of all, thanks for being here and thanks for having me, of course. My name is Olivier van Steenlandt. I'm a BI team lead working for a company called X2O. X2O is a retail organization located in Belgium, with stores in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany. At X2O, I'm mainly known as the person who makes the BI development planning and the person who is responsible to optimize the development and deployment flows as well. In my spare time, I'm a core member for DataMinds. DataMinds is the Belgian data user group focusing on the Microsoft Data Platform. Besides DataMinds, I do a bit of speaking and blogging as well, always about topics where I'm running into on my day-to-day job, and I'm always writing and talking about my personal experience. In case you have any questions during the session, after the session, next week, next month, doesn't really matter to me, just feel free to reach out. You can contact me via my personal website, via email, via Twitter, via LinkedIn if you would like to. Just reach out. I'm more than eager to assist where possible. Today, I'm going to take you on a journey that I've been experiencing in the past couple of years. So first, I will set the scene and explain where I was, let's say, by now, let's say 7 or 8 years ago. Then I will be explaining how we were able to move forward as a development team to work in a more flexible way. Then, of course, the main section on this session will be on how to get started with, of course, database projects and Azure DevOps. Near the end of the presentation, I will already give you a couple of pointers as well, what you can do afterwards to optimize your development and deployment flows. And at the end of the presentation, there will be a brief summary of benefits and at least one challenge, which you will definitely run into. Cool, let's keep things moving. So 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, can't properly remember me, but I was working in a rather small development team, mainly consisting of 3 to 5 developers. And at that point in time, we were having 2 environments at our disposal, a development environment and a production environment. And as a matter of process, we were keeping track of all changes manually. So every object we touched, every logic we changed, every configuration or parameter we added or adjusted was kept track of manually. Where? Well, in a development ticket, in a Word file, in an Excel file. We tried email as well. Let's say that wasn't the best solution. It can get quite messy quite fast. As a tool for development, we were mainly using SQL Server Management Studio, which of course is a very convenient way of working. But even at that point in time, we were having a couple of challenges which we really would like to overcome as well. One of these challenges, for example, was moving big projects to production. So what typically happened was, well, as soon as we received the go to move something to production, well, we first need to figure out where we documented the changes. So we were looking for our development tickets for the Word file, for the Excel file, and so on. As soon as we found out where the documentation was, we could start to prepare. So creating upgrade scripts, migration scripts, adding parameters, and so on. And as soon as that was done, we could start our deployment. And don't get me wrong, at that point in time, we were already busy for, well, half an hour, maybe 2, maybe 4, maybe a day, or even maybe more for really large projects. And as soon as preparation and deployment was done, we fired up test launches. And what typically happened was, well, at that point in time, we were required to start bug fixing straight away. Why? Well, we didn't document properly, so we were missing objects, missing configuration, missing parameters, and so on. So as you can hear, preparing and deployment really was a hassle at that point in time. In an ideal situation, what you actually would like to do is being able to prepare and deploy, let's say, in a matter of minutes, execute test launches after deployment, and as soon as your test launches are done, you want to go out with your team and start celebrating your victory of moving that project to production. In my case, it would definitely be with a decent glass of Belgian beer. Unfortunately, of course, at that point in time, I wasn't able to. A second example is priority changes. This is something where I was struggling with, especially when I just started to work. So the first 3 to 5 years were pretty difficult for priority changes and how to handle them. And let's take a look at this one from a business point of view. So let's say we are a beer manufacturing company and we're currently brewing the Leffe triple bottled. And since we're a very small brewery, we only have one production line. So at this point in time, the development team is making changes to the production line and is already making changes for 2 weeks. And at that point in time, management is running into the office and is explaining to the development team, well, we need to act quite fast since customer demand for draft beer is rising. So we want draft beer right now. At that point in time, the development team was required to disappoint the management team since, well, they didn't have any kind of way to go back to a stable state of the environment before they made the change, and it still required 2 more weeks to finalize them. So not the ideal situation. And even more importantly, the company couldn't keep up with customer demand. So not really something we would like to do, but so we need to keep this one in mind. We want to add some more flexibility in this case. The third example is unwanted change in production. Back at the development team where I worked like 6 years ago, we were allowed to come into the office in the morning and take a look at quick wins. And let's say that a quick win is development of 30-ish minutes. We were allowed to come into the office in the morning, execute the development straight away, execute validation by noon, and in the afternoon or evening, we were already deploying these kind of changes to our production environment. Now, that's great, you would say, well, what happened? I would say now and then, but no, it was way too often, is that we were deploying way too much into our production environment, which of course is a shame. So to give the example, instead of pushing the changes for the draft beer, we were already pushing our brand new beer into our production environment, which of course is a shame since, well, development wasn't done yet. There wasn't any kind of validation, and we only delivered a mediocre product to our end users, which is of course something we don't really want to do. Now, the final use case that I would like to share with you is about code went missing. So in that same development team a couple of years ago, we were required to use a certain, well, bug fixing strategy, which we call production first. Yeah, you hear it right, production first. I mean, we were required to execute bug fixes in the production environment first before moving them back to the development environment. Why? Well, just to minimize day-to-day business impact. Of course, what we typically forgot was, well, to copy the code back. So during a future deployment, we were overriding our existing knowledge. So we were delivering empty bottles of beer without the liquid gold inside, which of course is a shame. I mean, empty bottles of beer, come on. So this really is something that we want to avoid as well. And this is something I was struggling with quite a lot back then. Now, if we quickly summarize what goes wrong, well, first of all, as a development team, we were failing because of human mistake. Well, let's just be honest, we didn't document properly. We didn't prepare our deployments very well. We forgot to copy code back to the development environment, and so on. These are just examples. There was a lot more happening, but these are some examples. Then, as a development team, we were failing on team communication as well. I know I really didn't mention it, but team communication is so important. If we were properly communicating within our team of 3 to 5 people, everybody could have been aware that a bug fix was made. And at least during a future deployment, well, quickly validate if the bug fix was available in the development environment as well. Of course, at that point in time, we didn't. And then, of course, where we're here for today, code management. If there was a proper code management system in place, then we could have overcome, let's say, well, all of these issues for now. And that would be cool. So now it is time to take a look at the future. What are we going to do? Well, first of all, as a matter of environments, I would advise you to get a third environment in place as well, which we will be calling the acceptance environment. You can call it pre-production environment as well if you would like to, but a third environment. Now, the important question, of course, is, well, where are we going to use this environment for? Well, in my case, what I would like to do is, well, first of all, I would like to use this environment for deployment testing. That's one. But what is even more important to me personally is I actually want to get business involved with the changes before they go to production. So actually, I want to ask business to validate these kind of changes on the acceptance environment first before they move to production, just to make sure that I have some kind of way to give the business a certain feeling of ownership about the changes that they're asking. That's why I would get a third environment. Then, as a matter of process, we are going to introduce automatic change tracking. Well, automatic, why? We will be required to use a certain set of tools. And today I'm going to introduce you to Git, which is a file-based comparison system. Then I'm going to introduce you to Azure DevOps, which will be the service that we're going to use to host and save our database code. Then this is quite a big shift, but we are going to use Visual Studio as main tool for development. So this will be a quite shift from Management Studio to Visual Studio. If you want to, you can use Azure Data Studio as well or Visual Studio Code. But for today, I will be focusing on Visual Studio. Then the big question, what are we going to do with Management Studio? Well, if you want to, you can still use it, to be honest. So you can still use it to prepare your code, to execute some validation after deployment and so on. But as I mentioned, it will be more from a validation point of view. Now, take a look at database projects. Important to know is that a database project allows us to execute more project-oriented database development. And if we take a look at the left-hand side of the screen, right over there, we can see a screenshot of SQL Server Management Studio with an example database, in this case, the worldwide importers database, with the familiar folder structure, tables, views, store procedures, and so on. If we now take a look at the right-hand side of the screen, right there, we can see an example database project for that same database with, well, more or less the same folder structure. I see functions, I use store procedures, tables, and so on. The key takeaway right here is that the folder structure in your database project is your own responsibility. You can go wild, you can go crazy if you want to, just make sure that your folder structure is clear for your development team and for yourself. Then, what is important to mention about database projects as well? First of all, a great tip I would say is don't ever mention database names in scripts. And let me share you a story about this one. A couple of years ago, at one of the companies I worked previously, they really enjoyed to have the environment name in the database name. So database name underscore development or underscore dev, underscore acceptance, underscore production, or you know what, for the production environment, just leave the suffix behind. So if you're using hard-coded database names in your scripts, you won't be able to deploy from environment to another environment. Just know, in case you really need to mention a specific database name, you can do so, but then you could probably make use of SQL command variables. You don't need to remind the term for today, just know there is a way to refer to external objects in different databases. Then, what is important as well is something to mention about indexes. You can actually do two different things with indexes. You can say, well, I actually want to keep all my source code for my database altogether, including my indexes. That's a perfect valid thing to do. Or you can say, well, I actually don't want to, which is perfectly fine as well. Just know, in case you do, well, it might be that your deployment time will be increasing as well. The reason why is if you're changing a table, for example, and you're adjusting a column, it will first, or adding a column, it will first drop all indexes, recreate the table, and then recreate all indexes. So that's something you will need to consider as well. The last thing I want to mention about database projects for now is something about publishing profiles. A publishing profile is an XML file where you can store deployment properties into. So, for example, do you always want to deploy database properties? Or, for example, what do you want to do if there might be data loss? Or a pretty important one as well. what do you want to do if you find indexes on your target database which are not available in your database project? Keep that one in mind. Now, Azure DevOps. For those who don't know Azure DevOps mainly consists of 5 default services. Azure DevOps Repos is the one that we will be focusing on today. Azure DevOps Repos will be used to save and host our database code, or source code, to say it in that way. Then just know, in case you want to think about the database deployment automation, for example, it might be interesting to take a look at Azure DevOps Pipelines. And if you don't have a development ticketing system yet, it might be interesting to take a look at Azure DevOps Boards, for example. Now, if we take a closer look to Azure DevOps Repos, and for today, we're going to focus on the Git way of working. Then it is important to know that Git is a distributed version control system. What this means is, well, every single developer will be working on a local version of the code. That actually is what it means. Then, when you're working with Git, you will hear a lot about branching as well. Now, what is branching? Well, branching actually is nothing more or nothing less than creating a copy of the code and work on that. That's branching. Then, to finalize the section on Git for now, the most important commands for Git: pull to get all the changes from the remote to your local machine. Then push, or actually commit and push to get the changes that you have been making committed to your local repository and then pushed away to remote in Azure DevOps. And then merge. Merging is the process where we are going to combine 2 branches back to 1. That's merging. Don't worry, I will be showing you these ones during the demo later on as well. Then, before we can get really practical, I will need to talk a bit about branching strategies as well. I will keep it as short as I can. Today, I'm just going to introduce you to the branching strategy that I'm using, which is branching per feature or feature branching. And the key concepts here is, well, we will always have a main or master branch, which are basically the same. And this branch should always contain the production version of our code. Always, really no exceptions made here. Then what we are going to do, it isn't required, but it's something I like to do, is I'm going to create a development branch as well, where I'm going to host the development version of my code, which will be deployed to my development environment. And then, as you can see, in between, we have feature branches. And as you can see on a bit more on the right, we're going to base our feature branches on the main branch. The reason why we're always starting from the main branch to create a new branch is just because we want to be flexible. By doing this, we can start to juggle around with our priorities. This allows us to say, well, I've been working on a project until this afternoon. My boss runs into the office. I need to do something really quickly in production. I just create a new feature branch based on my main branch, execute the development really fast. Then we get it into the development branch to validate. If it's all fine, we can move it to production as well. That's what this is allowing us to do. Now, important here is if we are done with our development on our feature branch, we're going to merge it into the development branch. We're going to deploy it to the development environment. And we start our validation process. If we run into issues, and this is really important, you will need to create your fix on your feature branch and not on your development branch straight away. Just because we're going to use our feature branch later on to get it into our production environment as well. Okay. Cool. So, the biggest challenges about source control. First of all, if you're as patient as I am, you will definitely be running into merge conflicts, and mainly with the SQL project file. This is just one file where you will have all the fun about merge conflicts with, is this one. Then it needs to become a habit that you first, if you want to, for example, merge to your development branch, you will first need to pull all the changes from the development branch to your local machine, and only afterwards execute the merge. So you need to pull before you merge. That's something that really needs to become a habit. As soon as you got it, it's going to be fun. Then there is something to tell about branch maintenance as well. So branch maintenance. If we're going to use a manual merging strategy, so we're merging manually from our feature branch to our development branch, and later on from our feature branch to our production branch, main or master branch actually, then there will be some branch maintenance involved. So for every single branch you create, you will need to remove it in the end as well. To avoid this, I'm going to show you an alternative way later on, directly during the demo. And then the biggest challenge of them all, people. Everybody needs to be working in the same way or source control won't work. It is as easy as that. And I know this really sounds silly, but people will be your biggest challenge. Okay, cool. I've been talking quite some time theoretically. I think it's time to get into a more practical example. So let me jump over. There we go. So what did I do? I've created an empty Visual Studio solution called, well, you can see it right here. I created a brand new solution. And in that solution, I already created my very first database project, AdventureWorks LT. Now, as a first step, I'm actually going to do something completely different. So I'm going to create a brand new database project right here based on an existing database. So to get that done, I'm going to navigate to the left-hand side of my screen, and I've opened up the SQL Server Object Explorer right here. And as you can see, I connected to my local instance of SQL Server 2022, right? I just upgraded. So SQL Server 2022 on my local machine, and I have a couple of databases installed. And for today's demo, I'm going to use the AdventureWorks Data Warehouse database and the AdventureWorks LT database. As a first step, what we're going to do is, well, we're just going to import the full AdventureWorks Data Warehouse database. That's the first thing we're going to do. How do we get it done? Well, we can just right-click on the database and say Create New Project. By doing this, the Create New Project window is opening up. And what we need to define is, first of all, our project name. In my case, it would be AdventureWorks Works Data Warehouse. And then I need to choose where I want to save my project. In my case, of course, in the same folder as my other database projects in that solution. So, documents. It is presenting. Wow, this is hard. 2024. There we go. Right here. Then, important to, I'm going to do it. Oh no, I need to, anyway, going to do it quickly over again. I removed it by mistake. AdventureWorks Data Warehouse. There we go. Browse. Get to the right folder. I got it right. Oh, I can use this one. Get up. There we go. Sorry about this, fellas. There we go. AdventureWorks Data Warehouse. And what I want to do right now is take a look at these import settings. So for today, I'm not going to bother too much about these ones, but what I wanted to point out is this one, the folder structure. If you really like the folder structure as you have it in Management Studio, then I would advise you to use the object type folder structure. This is the most similar to what you have in Management Studio. It isn't completely the same, but it's the most similar. Okay, so for today, we're just going to use that one. There we go, and we're going to hit start. What Visual Studio is doing right now, it's creating a brand new database project, and then it's going to import all the different objects into the new database project. In the meanwhile, I actually want to show you something completely different. Right here, continue without code. There we go. Before you can get started with database projects, well, you will need to, or you will be required to install a certain tool. So if we navigate to the center top, to Tools, Get Tools and Features, and luckily it is showing up. There we go. The Visual Studio installer is launching. There we go. And if we quickly take a look at the right-hand side of the screen, data storage and processing, we need to figure out if SQL Server Data Tools is installed. This is important. Without this, we can't create database projects. Now, if you don't have it here, no worries. Just scroll down to the Other Toolsets section and just enable data storage and processing, install it, and you're good to go. Now, in the meanwhile, Visual Studio has done all the hard work for me. There we go. So if we take a quick look, it finished importing the database. It even created a log file for me. How kind? Well, to be fair, I've never taken a look at this log file in the past 8 years. As long as it works for me, it works. So now we can just finish and we're done. We actually just created our very first database project, so something to celebrate actually. Now, if we quickly do some validation, and let me get it up on the screen for you. There we go. Done. Oh, anyway. So if we quickly take a look, we have 5 different views on our target database, and we've got 5 different views in our database project. So it seems to be pretty fine. This is one way to import a full database. Now, as a next step, I'm going to show you an alternative way as well. So this is mainly because I had some challenges in the past couple of years where, for example, and in this case, I'm just going to show you, for this example, I'm going to use the AdventureWorks LT database. And let's say this database is owned by a third-party vendor. And we're not allowed to change anything on the existing objects, but they were so kind to create a separate schema for us where we were allowed to create at least a couple of views, which we could use to synchronize the data, for example. And let's say for today, the only thing we're allowed to maintain is view, product, and description. This is the only thing that is in our ownership. Now, since I'm working with database projects, I really want to have this one in a database project since I want to maintain it in that way. So how can we get it done? So first of all, I've created there we go. I'm going to zoom in slightly. There we go. I've created my AdventureWorks LT database project, which of course was already there. I'm right clicking. I'm going to add new folder, and I'm going to add my views folder. Since I'm not using any kind of import functionality or create database project functionality, I will need to define my folder structure myself. Now, the next thing I can do, and this is fairly easy, you just go to the target server and you just select your view and drag and drop it into the required folder. That's everything I need to do. And there we go. So cool. It can be this easy. And if we give it some time, yes, save. And now we really need to play the waiting game. It needs to validate. Since this seems to be fine, but I can tell you, as soon as I try to build my project, it will go wrong. And for some reason, it doesn't do anything. Well, let's give it a go. I'm just going to build. I will be explaining what this does later on. There we go. That was what I wanted to see. So if we take a closer look, as you see, I will get a lot of errors. And what is it telling me? Well, yeah, okay, view, product, and description has an unresolved reference to schema, has an unresolved reference to object, unresolved reference to object, and so on. I think you get the point here. So what is happening? When you're working with database projects, by default, the database project wants to have every single dependent object included in the database project as well. Of course, in this use case, where we only are allowed to maintain certain objects, we can't get the dependent objects into the database project. So now I will be showing you a way how to avoid this, or how you can even still work with the database project. So it will be a multi-step process, so just hang on, and if you have questions, please feel free to get them in the chat window as well. So what we do is we navigate to Solution Explorer to our view, product, and description. We right-click and we go to Properties. This is opening up the Properties pane right here. There we go. And there is something which is called the build action. And this is something that we will need to understand pretty well. For every single file in a database project, a build action will be defined, and by default, it will get the build action. What this means is, well, this is explained to the system. Well, this file needs to be included in every single build and deployment action that I want to do later on. Now, since, well, we can't build our code at this point in time since we're having issues, we're willing to choose something else. So we're going to use build action no. This is going to tell the system, well, just ignore this file for the default build and deployment process. Yeah, okay, but hey, I really want to get it built and deployed, of course, as well. We'll get to that point. So instead of build, we choose none. Go. I'm going to save. And now it is time to introduce you to a new kind of file. If we right-click on our database project, we go to Add new item. And we're going to search for post. There we go. A post deployment script. Let's quickly give it a name. There we go. And then we can start to take a look at what it is. So this file contains SQL statements that will be appended to the build script. That's what it does. Okay, cool. For now, please keep the appended word into mind. This is our magic word in half a minute. So furthermore, it is explaining, well, you can use this kind of syntax to include a file in the build script. Okay, let's try. So R double point, fuse. No, not that one. Fuse. Yes, that one, please. And save. Cool. Now we are good to go. Oh, by the way, since I'm having this issue right now, as you can see, it still gives me red curly errors for some reason. It's just because this button isn't on. You need to be in SQL command mode to get it properly validated. But it doesn't break anything if you want to deploy anyway, but just that you know. So we have added the file into the post deployment script. Now I asked you to keep the appended word in mind. Let's take a look again at our view. So what the post deployment script is doing, it's going through the build phase, it's going to generate a DecPack file, and in that file, in the end, will be a deployment file with all the changes in the end. And what this is going to do is just going to say, well, as soon as that file gets generated, just take this code from that file and paste it at the bottom of the script every single time. So what's going wrong? Well, maybe not the first time, but at least from the second time onwards, is this. It will always ask the system to create this view. So in this case, we just need to assist data tools a little bit. So we can just say, well, create or alter view. There we go. And now we're good to go. What you can do as well, if you want to, is the following. You can say, well, drop view if exists. There we go. And then you need to add the go in between. That's something you can do as well. And now we're good to go. So cool. At this point in time, we can be really proud of ourselves. We actually create our very first version, which is ready to share with our development team as well. So it is time to get this one into Azure DevOps. So I'm opening up Azure DevOps, if I can find it at least. All right, here, perfect. And what did I do? I signed in into the Azure DevOps portal. I created an organization. I created my my project, my Azure DevOps projects in this case. And now I need to navigate to repos, since this is the location where we're going to host our code. And as you can see, I already have one repository in case things went terribly wrong during the session today. And we're actually going to create a new repository, which will be showing up here any minute. So now let's go back to Visual Studio. And we are going to navigate to the right bottom corner. And right here, well, Visual Studio was already giving us a subtle hint. Please add it to source control. So let's follow the advice, add to source control git. Then, and this is amazing about Visual Studio 2022, by the way. Right here, you have the option to connect immediately to Azure DevOps. If you work on an older version of Visual Studio, then you probably will need or will be required to use the existing remote option. That works fine as well, but then you will be creating your repository first in Azure DevOps and using the URL to get your local database project synced. Then, so Azure DevOps, yeah, that's fine. I need to choose the right credentials. There we go. Organization, oh, not again. Okay, anyway, okay, I did it. Just to my organization, I need to choose my project as well. There we go. I need to provide the repository name. This is fine for me. Create and push save. Yes. What it is doing right now, it's first going to create your local repository on your local machine. Then it's going to create a link between your local repository and Azure DevOps, and then it's going to push all the changes that we've been making to Azure DevOps. And by now, it did it perfectly. So let's take a look in Azure DevOps. If I now hit refresh, I'm going to the center of the screen at the top. I can see my brand new repository right here with all my recent changes. Cool. This is the time where we can give ourselves a pat at the back. And right now, everybody of the team can start to enjoy the work that we have been doing. Now, let's talk about some development. What are we going to do? First of all, what I'm just going to do, and this isn't required, I'm going to create my development branch in Azure DevOps. So master, new branch, well, just call it development. There we go. Based on master, that's fine. Create. So we have created our development branch. And now, well, let's get some development done. So I switched over back to Visual Studio, and I'm going to navigate to the right bottom corner, where I'm going to choose master, new branch. There we go. Now I need to give a name to my branch, and I'm going to call it feature. This is something I really like to do. I'm calling it feature / my ticket number, data or ticket number 1, for example. If it was a bug fix branch, you can call it bug fix as well. The benefit of doing it in this way, if you use a /, if you have a lot of branches, they will be folding into a specific folder, the bug fix folder, the feature folder in Azure DevOps then, of course. That's why I really like to do this in this way. So feature in my case, and then based on, if you pulled all the changes from the master branch in, you can use master. If not, just go to remote origin master. That's the safest way, and then just hit create. There we go. To validate that we're working on our feature branch, just navigate to the right bottom corner. There we go. And we can see that we have created our local feature branch, data or ticket number 1. Now, some development. As you can see, I've commented a field, so let's add it again. There we go. This was really hard, by the way. So that's our development for today. It isn't too fancy, it's just to show how things work, of course. And if we now get back to the right bottom corner, we can see that one change has been identified. So automatic change tracking. So we can, well, just click on the pencil, or we can go to the Get Changes pane on the right. And then we need to do a couple of things. So, okay, Visual Studio has identified the change on the view, product, and description. Let's stage the change. There we go. Staging just is telling the system, well, I want to do something with this file right now. With this change, I want to do something about it. Now, it always asks to enter a message as well. Please make sure this is a meaningful one. What I like to do is saying, well, this is my ticket number, and then I'm adding the reason why I made the change. In my case, well, edit column, demo purposes. Can be something. Wow, demo purposes. Whew, this is hard. Add a code for demo purposes to show how easy it can be to work with database projects and Azure DevOps. Yes, made it. And now we just need to say commit stage then push. And at this point in time, it is committing the change locally and pushing it to the remote as well. So meaning right now, if we go back to Azure DevOps, I'm going to zoom out and I refresh. I can find my feature branch here as well. Feature data or ticket number 1. And as you can see, if I quickly go to my change, oh, here it is. I can see my change that I made right here. Cool. Now we want to get our change to the development environment. To get that done, we just navigate back to Visual Studio. We're going to navigate to the right bottom corner once more. This will be your favorite corner, by the way. You're going to use it all the time. Feature data or ticket number 1. Well, I didn't have the development branch locally yet, so, but hey, we got it already on the remote, so let's take a look. This doesn't seem to be right. I can't find my development branch. Well, when I was explaining the most important Git commands, I left one out on purpose. There actually are 4 in my opinion, which is fetch. So if we just click over here, we can use a fetch command as well. What a fetch command is doing, this is getting branch-based changes in. If somebody removes a remote branch, adds a remote branch, these kind of changes can be retrieved by using a fetch command. So if we now try again, click on the feature data layers, number 1 branch, remote. There we go. We have our origin development branch. So if we click on it, we're checking out the development branch locally, and now we can execute our merge from our feature branch to our development branch. So let's give it a try. Development, right-click on the feature branch, merge into current branch. Then, of course, it's going to ask, are you sure? Yes, please. So it's saying, well, are you sure you want to do this? We're going to merge today. There we go. So our change is available in the development branch. Be aware, this is only available on your local machine at this point in time. Why do I know? Well, if we take a look once more at the right bottom corner, we can see this. This is explaining, well, there is one commit waiting to be pushed to the remote. In this case, of course, the commit where we explain to the system that we have merged our feature branch with the development branch. So if we just push, the change will be in the remote as well. And to show you, let's quickly switch over. I'm going to hit refresh. I'm going to my folder over here somewhere. 3 minutes ago. That doesn't sound right. Well, I made this mistake on purpose. What I actually did was I'm showing you the last change on my feature branch. This is something where I lost some time with. If you want to validate changes in Azure DevOps, make sure you're looking at the right branch. So if I just go to my development branch, I can find my change here as well. There we go. So it is here. And as you can see, of course, it also says 3 minutes ago. So it's taking the time of the development and not when you merge the change into the target branch. Cool. Our change is available in the development branch. Now it is time to get it deployed to our development environment. So I'm switching over again to Visual Studio. I'm going to the Solution Explorer. Let me minimize this one as well. There we go. And now what is important to do is we're just going to right click on our database directory and say publish. At this point, the build process is launching and is already executed as well. And the most important about the build process is, well, it's going to execute a couple of validations. And in the end, if everything went right, it's generating 3 different files. The most important one is the .decpack file. This will be used to deploy to your destination environment. If you ever want to find out what is included in a decpack file, well, you can easily replace the .decpack extension with .zip, extract all, and take a look inside. It can be fun for once, actually. So that's something you can do. As soon as the build has successfully completed, the publish database window will be opening. And what do we need to do? Well, we need to connect to our target database. In my case, it will be localhost. Yeah, I do have the right one. Connection. Okay, succeeded. Great. Okay. That's it. And now, well, before I'm going to hit the publish button, I'm going to advanced. Since here I want to show you a couple of things as well. First of all, as mentioned before about publishing profiles, you can do a couple of configurations. So in the first case, in this use case, I'm deploying to a third-party vendor database. I don't want to deploy the database properties. So the next one, this has been a lifesaver for me a couple of times. This will be making sure that if there might be any kind of data loss during deployment, vector deployment will stop. Full period. This saved my life a couple of times. So I'm always keeping this one enabled. If you navigate to the drop section of the publish settings, are the ones on the bottom, these ones. And especially the last one. In case you don't want to include your indexes in your database project, make sure to unmark this one. I forgot it in the past myself a couple of times, which provided me with a fun day at work as well, where I was required to recreate every single index on my data warehousing environment. It was a lot of fun. So now that you know, sure to unmark these ones if you don't have your indexes in your database project, of course, and hit OK. Now we can hit the publish button, but before we do that, we of course want to save our configuration. So we choose save profile as, we give it a name. In my case, well, adventure_lt_dev would work. There we go. And now let's I do have time, so let's quickly take a look at our publishing profile, which is just showing up in our Solution Explorer on the right, where we can right-click and say Open. And before, it's just an XML file with every single configuration included. So, for example, well, do I need to block when there might be data loss? Yes. Do I want my indexes to drop? No. These kind of things. So this is pretty useful. The benefit about this one is, well, I'm just going to double click on my publishing profile. I'm going to wait. There we go. The build process launched. It was successful. Opened the published database window, and it preloaded every single configuration into the published database window. Now I can easily just say, well, you know what? Publish my change, please. And I need to play the waiting game once more. So this might take some while, and there we go. So, yay. So what did it do? It created a publishing preview. It created the database script. It executed the script on the database and completed successfully. All that in 7 seconds. This really was a game changer for me personally. In the past, and let's say now for this change today, we were required to do, well, let's say 5 minutes of work. We executed development. We did the preparation for the deployment. We deployed in a couple of minutes. I know this was a really small change, but the deployment only took 7 times, and you would say, well, just because it's a small change, well, I'm using these kind of principles in much larger environments as well. And to my largest database, I think I have a deployment time of 3 minutes, maybe. So it really is a game changer for me. And this is, yeah, for me personally, this is just amazing. So that is how you can deploy. Now, this is deployment to a development environment. Before I switch over to Azure DevOps, I want to show you something else, which I really like in Azure DevOps, in database projects, by the way. If I right-click on my view, and I'm going to Git, view history. There we go, and let me make it a bit smaller. There we go. This is what I want to show you. I get a full overview for every single object. Well, who made a change, when the change was made, why the change was made, where the change currently is, and if I want to, I can easily select both versions, right-click and say compare. And this is showing me exactly what has been changed. This is something I'm using all the time, because I'm doing quite a lot of validation work, for example. So this really might be something where you can benefit from as well. Now, well, I see a question coming about branching policies in Azure DevOps. Yes, it's a little bit out of the scope for this session, but yes, I'm using them. I will get to it while I'm showing you something else. So Azure DevOps. So our development was deployed to the development environment. Let's say validation was perfectly fine. And right now, I want to get my change into production. So what should I do? I need to merge my feature branch into my master or main branch. As you may remind, I mentioned something about branch maintenance. To avoid branch maintenance, we're going to use a different technique. We're not going to merge manually. That's too much work anyway. So we're going to do something else. So in Azure DevOps, in the repos section, we're going to navigate to pull requests. We're just going to say, well, create a new pull request at the right top corner, new pull request. Then right here, we're just going to say, I want to start from feature dataverse ticket number 1 into master. It's adding a title, adding a description, and then it says, well, reviewers. Okay, yeah, I'm a one-man team for today, but you can add somebody else. And I strongly advise you to add somebody else. This is one of the things that I'm doing, by the way. Nobody is allowed to approve their own pull requests. That's one of the policies I try to use. And people are not allowed to merge directly in my master branch. It needs to go over pull request. That just as a side note. Now, so reviewer is me for today, and then I'm just going to say create. Checking for merge conflicts, no merge conflicts found. Perfect. Now I can easily go to the Files tab, And right here, I can see, okay, as point from the reviewer in this case, okay, a change was made to the view product and description. Let's take a look. Okay, so what has been done? Okay, product color has been added. Seems to be quite okay. Well, I'm not going to discuss the formatting, but it will work. So as a reviewer, I'm going to say at the right top corner, I approve this change, and then I'm going to complete the pull request. Complete, and then the only thing, I'm not going to bother about the other features in here, but this is the one I wanted to point out. By using pull requests, you're not only introducing peer reviewing, but you can use this feature as well, which will be deleting the source branch after the merge. This is how you can avoid to have branch maintenance involved in Azure DevOps. So we just say complete merge. And now we play the waiting game. Merging pull request, we just need to wait until it gets done. And there we go, completed. Right now, we are able to deploy our master branch to our production environment. Of course, I can't do it for the demo today, but that's what you would basically do as a next step. To show you, I'm just going to navigate to the branches section on the left in the center of the screen, branches, all branches, and as you can see, no more feature branch available. So that's what it does. Cool. This is everything I want to show you today during the demo. So let's head back to the presentation. This one, and I hope my clicker works. No. Anyway, there it goes. It needs to wake up. Anyway, moving forward. So today I've been showing you how you can set up a database project in two different ways. Showing you how to get a full database incorporated and even how you can incorporate only a subsection of database. Then I've been showing you as well how you can set up Azure DevOps and how you can synchronize your database projects with Azure DevOps and start to work with it as well. We have been discussing, well, discussing maybe not the best word, but we have been talking about branching as well. And I've just shown you which kind of branching strategy I am using. This is, of course, personal preference. There are a lot of different branching strategies out there. This was the most convenient one for me personally, since it works really well for the company where I work for. Then I've shown you in the end how you can use pull requests as well. So I would strongly advise to use it actually, just because introducing, peer reviewing, and this has some major benefits as well. Then, as future next steps, what my ideas are, they're not really in a particular order, but what you can do is starting to take a look at test automation. If you want to, well, for example, you can take a look at T-SQL-T, which is a T-SQL unit testing framework. And then, of course, deployment automation. Why not? I'm already gained a lot of time by doing this, by starting to work with database projects and Azure DevOps. But a couple of 1 or 2 years ago, I was working for a group of companies where I was required to get my changes to 9 different environments: 3 development environments, 3 acceptance environments, 3 production environments. Right now, preparation and deployment takes me 5 minutes for every single environment. Well, still 45 minutes at least. I need to sign in, deploy manually, and so on. So I would even be able to, well, just recover the 45 minutes or the hour, basically. So might be interesting as well. Now, last one, benefits and challenges. So as benefits, I really hope I was able to show you today that, or how easy it can be to set up database projects in Azure DevOps, and that I was able to convince you that you will finally have that clear change flow. No adventures anymore with development tickets, with emails, with Word files, Excel files. You have every single change in branches, and if you want to, you can figure out the history of your changes as well. This is something which I really enjoy about using these kind of systems. Then I really hope I was able to show you how the efficiency of deploying will be improving as well. In my case, from hours or days to a couple of minutes for one environment. And then, of course, I mentioned it actually in the previous slide as well. Please start to work with pull requests as well. It will improve your development quality. In my case, for example, I started to use it a couple of years ago as well, I think 2-3 years, when I switched over to Azure DevOps, for example. I started to use it, and I was able to get the number of bugs or bug fixes down by at least 50%. So it really improves your development quality a lot, just because somebody else needs to revise your work before it can move to the next environment. And then finally, I know I already mentioned it before, the biggest challenge of them all, actually it says changing habits, change the way you work. Well, basically people, it really is in that way. People will be your biggest challenge. Everybody will be required to use the same way of development and deployment, otherwise it won't work. That's the challenge. That being said, before I say goodbye, something I did need to mention, every single thing that we went through today during the demo, and even the future next steps as well, are completely documented on my personal website. So I have a couple of full blog post series about getting started with database projects and Azure DevOps, and then to continue with the deployment automation as well, where I'm delivering a session on, by the way, on the 20th of February this year, 2024, on US time as well. So it might be interesting. So thank you very much for being here today. Thanks for having me, of course. In case you have any feedback, any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
I'm so glad you remembered. I was gonna make sure I told you about the slides. I think I'm on somebody's feedback here. Let me see. Oh, that's better. Maybe not. Let me check here. I did have a quick question, but oh, actually, it's not a question. I just wanted to say that the database names thing that you said kind of towards the beginning, spot on, because we have that problem currently in our environment, and it drives me insane.
Exactly.
It was set up by consultants prior to me coming on. So one of our goal as we kind of make some big changes is, we need to get that out, because you're going to have to, we have to hard code it. And every time, you know, we have a database stored procedure with it in, it's just.
Yeah. Well, if you're wondering how you need to use SQL command variables, that's, if I'm right, I've written about it as well. So it should be there in there as well, for example. It's a fairly easy solution, and I'm using it all the time. So
is the blog post on? So I don't see it on the slide, or is it? Oh no.
What I can do,
if
I just go there,
because I am going to be going to it and looking at it.
Yeah. So if we go to data cookbooks, we have getting started with database projects and Azure DevOps. Normally, every single thing needs to be in here in chronological order as well. Partially, it's what we talked about today, pull requests, SQL command variables, for example.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm really going.
I'll be directing my team to this.
Yeah. With a hard-coded database name, what are we going to do? What is it? And then how we're going to solve it. So it is in there.
Oh, fantastic. Love it. Thank you so much for speaking for us. We love it. Great job. Always a great time to see you present. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that concludes our lunch and learn today. So feel free to hit him up if you have any questions, like he said on his last slide. And I know I'll definitely be looking at the website to practice some of these things out, and I appreciate it.
About my slides, I will get them fixed, and we'll get.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, apparently the slides aren't available for download. I will get it sorted out. Yeah. This one is from Friday.
They were right on it. Going to download it right away.
Yeah, to be fair, my slides don't say that much. But of course, if you have a blog post, then it should be more than fine.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks again. And
my pleasure.
Everybody else, at least in the US, I hope you ate your lunch. I know I'm going to go run eat mine. Thanks, and have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.